My dear friends, we have gathered here today to mourn the loss of a world we still pretend exists. The old, predictable industrial world of 1925. It's dead, gone, buried. And yet, in our companies, we still act as if it is still alive. We cling to control, to certainty, to linear thinking, to simple cause and effect. And the truth is, control is an illusion. And in a complex world, that illusion is killing us. May I quickly ask, who knew the deceased well? Who has dear memories of the yearly performance reviews? And who spend a lot of time in PI plannings? My dear friends, I'm not here today to comfort you. I'm here to show you how to reverse control and thrive in the messy, emergent, unpredictable new world of complexity. I'm here because it matters. It matters now more than it did ever before, because whilst we were clinging to this dead corpse of control, our world is falling apart. Who here still watches the news? I don't, to be honest. It makes me sad, and it makes me scared. We have become completely unable to solve today's problems. People in my network are losing their jobs or burning out. Companies are constantly caught by surprise, desperately trying to navigate from one disruption to the next. And our dependency on Russia, China, and Daddy US, which has always been sad, is now becoming a blocking constraint to our local economies. And instead of being proud of our own people, our capabilities, our knowledge, instead of now doubling down on our own ability to innovate, we freeze. And we bend over backwards to please our sugar daddies. We act like we're victims, like things happen outside of our control. Do you remember the iceberg model? I'm sure most of you do. We constantly keep eyeballing the top of the iceberg, where we can spot symptoms and obvious events. While actually everything underneath, the patterns, the structures, the mental models, they remain in the dark. And we don't even spend a second wondering what is triggering all those events and symptoms that we see at the top. And when problems arise there, we tend to go for old methodologies to fix them, like linear thinking. And very often that just makes it worse. Now, I'm very happy to say that I'm a mom. It wasn't a given, it took us a while. His name is Jack, and he just, in September now, started his first year in primary school. It was actually for the first time since he was born that I was that scared that he might look like me. Because school and I, we weren't very compatible. Instead of answering questions on an exam, I just wrote questions in return. But do you remember that age that a kid constantly asks why? It's usually that age that kids start going to school. And then they go with their backpacks filled with hope and eager to learn. And what happens? They hear, sit still, shut up, listen to me, repeat after me, follow the rules, don't talk to your neighbor, because that's cheating. That's because our educational system still comes from industrial times, when we try to prepare our kids for work in manufacturing. So by the time that they finish school, they don't ask why anymore. We have successfully unlearned their most precious ability, which is critical thinking. And it's that critical thinking that we now so desperately need, because with AI and technology and everything advancing so quickly, we're just wasting all their precious time teaching them things which will soon be useless. So how come our educational system hasn't evolved over the last 100 years? Because it's still so very convenient. It's easy when people don't question everything, when you don't need to defend your decision, and Banksy doesn't need to draw silly cartoons on public buildings. And organizations, they can just relax. They hire a specialist, give them a specific chair, a tight function description, and a chokingly tight mandate, and they can just rest assured that education has taught them to just nod and execute. We have unlearned to ask why. We treat symptoms instead of curing the disease. Now, let me explain why we do that. We found a company, and if we're lucky, the company thrives. And then you get to this point, which is called the point of decay, where it can only go downhill from there. And it's there where we get this illusion that we can keep things running indefinitely, that if something breaks, we can just fix it. Again, a mechanistic view that comes from industrial times. But it also is at this point that bureaucracy sets in, that we start clinging to control, that we introduce rigid processes, that we hire people to keep an eye on other people, and that we build 5-year plans and then blindly execute them. And to be honest, very often at this point, it only gets worse. It's a little bit like we're playing whack-a-mole. Do you know that? You have this tool, a hammer, and a mole, a problem, and we keep banging on its head until it goes under. And for a while, you get this rush of fulfillment, this adrenaline, because yeah, it works, it goes under. But the mole keeps reappearing, and we need to hit it again. And oh gosh, we are so busy. And then sometimes it gets worse, and more moles start to appear, and we need to hit more, and we need to hit faster. And oh gosh, we are so busy, busy, busy. We don't even spend a minute thinking about the mechanism underneath that makes the mole reappear. And while we're then so busy clinging to our dead corpse of control, when then change comes around and slaps us in the face, what do? Raise your hands if this sounds familiar. We freeze. Like a rabbit in the headlights, we freeze and we wait until the threat is gone. Or we do a full reorg, because reshuffling problems always works, right? Anyone? Wow, you're all so lucky. Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. Or we think that we spot the problem and we go for a quick fix solution. This is called a fragmented optimization. Very popular here is that you either throw more people at the problem or you find those you can blame and fire them. So we have two major issues. We fixate on symptoms, and we tend to go for short-term, quick fixes. We're running around like cats chasing a laser pointer. And while we're then so busy, clinging to our old corpse here, we fail to see what is emerging. Because if one system collapses, small, isolated alternatives start to arise. So we need to start sensing what is emerging so that we can navigate the loss of the old and embrace the emergence of the new. And when we do that, we get this wavy motion. This is what adaptive organizations look like. A lot more comfortable than the awkward spikes of our dear deceased here. So we've been hitting control out of fear, the fear of letting go and the fear of the unknown. So what happens if we reverse it? So we're going to start with the L for learning. And for those of you who now think, oh yeah, this is SAP, Litmus, or Coursera, or Udemy, nah, not really talking about that. I'm talking about the Learning Organization by Peter Senge. So change in an organization should always be a collaborative effort, but it is pioneered by individuals. And each individual needs to go through their personal transformation of being comfortable with letting go of the old and embracing an unknown future. So personal mastery here isn't only about ruthlessly devouring books and getting smarter or better at your work. No, it's about relearning that critical thinking, which they unlearned us at school. And that critical thinking will then inevitably lead you to challenging mental models and assumptions and rules. And then your personal values will either trigger you to speak up or keep silent. But it's when you do speak up and you go learn with a group where true magic happens, because there you can turn individual intelligence into collective intelligence. Oh, and please not become someone told you to, because someone said you need to follow a workshop or do a team building. No, because you want to. Because together with that group of people, you have a purpose that is very often bigger than you, bigger than your team, sometimes even bigger than your organization, that invites you to step outside of your comfort zone and embrace something new, experiment. And then you have systems thinking. And systems thinking is actually the alternative to our problem of fixating on symptoms and going for the quick fixes. Systems thinking is very often explained by looking at a forest and understanding that a forest isn't just a collection of individual trees. It's actually a very connected, complex ecosystem where the trees and the soil, the rain, the sun, the animals, they all influence each other and shape the whole. So systems thinking actually allows us to see the forest for the trees, which means seeing the bigger picture. It also helps us to understand that A doesn't always just simply cause B, but that things are also emerging. Understand also that everything is part of a network and not disconnected, as we very often think. And most importantly, instead of trying to plan change, see how you can build systems and organizations that are truly adaptive. So how do we do that? How can we stop hugging trees and start seeing the forest? Mapping. We've heard a lot about this already today, and I suppose all of you have done a lot of mapping already. Some value stream mapping, event storming, user needs mapping. Also, worldly mapping is super useful to see where old things are dying and new things are emerging. Now, the mapping related to systems thinking is exactly that. But it just goes a little bit broader and deeper to uncover those patterns, structures, and mental models underneath. So let me show you quickly how to build a systems map. So systems mapping is usually used to uncover which elements are influencing a problem statement or an aspiration. So it can be releasing a new product or getting a better shared understanding of your market. So you start by identifying those elements which are influencing that statement. Those can be financial, environmental, can be stakeholders. And then when you have them all up there, you start drawing lines in between them. These are the connections, the causal loops between those different elements. And then most importantly, you draw feedback loops. These will enable you to learn about your system, to learn what the long-term consequences of your actions are. So this is an actual systems map that I created with an organization to identify why people were leaving their organization, but also what the consequences were for that organization. If you would have solved this with simple linear thinking, what would you have done? What would most organizations do? Just try to give people a raise, organize an office party to be more fun. Now, if you actually look at this systems map, you can see that maybe there are certain leverage points on which you want to work to prevent people from leaving. And that could be, minimizing bureaucracy, increasing people's autonomy, or looking for more career opportunities, because you can see how devastating the consequences are for the organization that people are leaving them. Another example is this one. By the way, when we do this, normally it's in a big room with posters and we draw lines. It's very messy. So I just created digital abstracts of it so that it can make some sense to you. So this one I did with a startup in AI. And it was to uncover the elements influencing them to bring a new product to the market. And what it actually enabled them to see is how certain elements were influencing their customers, like EU regulations or data maturity. And it also showed them possible stakeholders who they actually could start collaborating with, something they hadn't even thought of before. Now, very important, it's not about the visual. Like with every mapping, it's about the conversation. If you want to do this, make sure that you bring together a huge variety of people, a very diverse group of people, to do this together, because you want to uncover things you didn't know before. You know, the mental models, the patterns, the structures that you're not aware of. So diversity here is key, and the conversation, of course. Now, there's two other bugs which crawled into our dead corpse here, which prevent every chance of learning: politeness and politics. Do you remember that colleague that first crawled up your ass and then stabbed you in the back? Now, the antidote for politeness and politics, and a prerequisite for learning, is trust. Yes, I love the fluffy, gooey stuff in the middle. So as we mentioned before, change is always a collaborative process, but it's driven by individuals. So have a look inside. Do you trust your colleagues? These days, I have the impression that we're more likely to trust an algorithm than an actual human being. Quick story. A company that I worked for a few years ago when I was still an employee, they were struggling. They kept repeating the same actions and kept getting the same results. It's really weird. So they flew in the CEO of a sister company to fix things, which usually means fire some people, reshuffle some problems, cut some costs. So before any major discomfort was done, I thought, you know, I'm going to talk to him, I'm going to speak with him. So I barged in through his door and I said, listen, we have a lot of people here who've been working here for a while. They might have some clue about why things aren't working. Maybe we should listen to them first. And he looked at me and he said, that's the worst idea ever. He said, we can't just invite everyone to share ideas and opinions and get involved. Before you know it, we'll be selling hot dogs. Sounds really weird because that's actually what he said. So I wrote my resignation letter. The most important role of leadership is to enable trust. Without it, you get polarization, us versus them, and change becomes impossible. Today, our world is mostly built around polarization. One of the many reasons why we had those headlines, newspaper headlines before. Now, psychological safety isn't just about your ability to speak up. It's also, and maybe even more so, about being heard, about truly listening, even when it's uncomfortable and people are saying things that you would rather not hear. So, and Kim Scott explains perfectly how giving feedback or speaking up is always about being honest and direct, but also because you care. When we work with teams and we want to build trust in those teams, a great way that we can do that is by inviting dissent. It's to make sure that all voices are being heard. So, for example, we have this idea on the table, then we explicitly ask, what is wrong with it? If we would implement this idea, how could this go awfully wrong? And it's those people who then speak up, who give you insights into those pattern structures and especially mental models underneath that you would otherwise miss. So safety isn't about avoiding conflict. It's rather about being comfortable with thinking differently and about constructively turning dissent into added value. Now, an amazing customer that Rich and I got to work with last year through Team Topologies is Blue Lagoon, this amazing wellness resort in Iceland. They, to me, embody trust in the most amazing way. So they sensed a demand to grow. But they also realized that they had hit the limits of both their organizational structure, software architecture, and even the cognitive load of their people. So instead of pushing harder on the system, they did something radical. They called Rich and me and they said, listen, we want to hand the challenge to our people. Full trust, no quick fixes, and a lot of patience. So Rich and I, of course, happily went on site with them for 3 days. And we first, of course, wanted to get everyone aligned on why we were there, to make sure that all possible blockers, but also frustrations, were able to get out from the start. And we did that with outcome mapping. And then we did a variation on value stream mapping, where everyone from a certain department talked to others through their experience of a recent project. It was actually the first time that a lot of people could look across silos. And day 2 was about letting go of habits, but also of roles. And we did that with user needs mapping. It's invented by Rich Allen. His book is out. He's here in the room. Go have a talk to him. And this actually showed us where team boundaries were causing issues and where fragmented users' experiences were being born. So we needed to uncover better team boundaries, and we did that by exploring fracture planes, so new ways of splitting up teams and value streams. And we did that with independent service heuristics. And the results were then possible new team boundaries. So those we stress tested with, going on too quickly, with team interaction modeling. So we visualized common flows of value in their organization by using the Team Topologies modeling shapes. And then after 3 more months of very intense collaboration, we ended up with something messy like this. A little bit of the old and a little bit of the new. It's not perfect, but what we actually accomplished was amazing. Moving from project to product teams actually enabled them to deliver 5 new initiatives in just 6 months. Their onboarding went from 3 months to just a few days. And the most important thing is that those clear team boundaries and purposeful value streams enabled people to take real stewardship over the value that they were delivering. They were intrinsically motivated to reach out to other stakeholders and people in other value streams to ensure that together they could deliver the highest possible value for their customers. And today, thanks to the curiosity it also inspired in other departments, they can now move towards maybe one day becoming a real micro-enterprise organization, where autonomous value streams are supported by internal and external platforms and enabling teams. So if you scan the QR code, you can download or you can read the full customer case. And this now takes us to the last part, which is collaboration. If we would have told Blue Lagoon to organize themselves in the way that you just saw with the value streams and the product teams, it wouldn't have worked. The reason why change sticks at Blue Lagoon is because of collaboration. They trusted their people to reinvent the system, to step outside of roles and silos, and together collaborate on aligning around value streams and looking to the organization from the customer perspective. And because they did it together, they really own it. What I've learned over the last few years working with very complex organizations is that the organizational structure is very often the biggest blocker for collaboration and also for adaptability. Organizations still very often grow in silos, and that's because they don't know any better. And it seems harmless up until the point that that communication starts to fail and dependencies are suddenly everywhere and people don't have a clue what other teams are doing. So what we do instead is we gather all the people and all the stakeholders, we bring them together to visualize their flow of value, to get a shared and neutral understanding of their environment, to create a shared language and define teams with clear boundaries so that they can take stewardship over the value that they are delivering. And most importantly, we co-create an environment that incentivizes collaboration over individual performance. The result is that people experience the value of collaboration whilst we're doing all this. And they learn to understand the principles and the practices behind it so that they can continue optimizing their organizational dynamics even after we've left. So if your org chart is working against collaboration, you might actually already be as dead as our dear deceased here. So most of you want change, right? You're either a coach, a change maker, a frustrated developer, or you got a free ticket to this conference and you have actually no clue what you're doing here. Just trust the universe. Now, for decades, we've seen hypes and frameworks and consultants promising transformation, right? And some companies cling to our dead corpse here or hopped on that hype and they implemented a framework or parts of it or a combination of some and nothing worked. What they got instead? Dead corpses wrapped in rigid structures and even longer builds. Now, Agile didn't fail. Organizations did. Because agility doesn't come through frameworks or change makers, or reorgs, or change managers even. Change only happens when enough people are intrinsically motivated to let go of the old and embrace the new. So we need to build agency. No, not agents, agency, which means bringing together enough people, like a critical mass, to really drive continuous and sustainable change. And then instead of barging in through the door of your CEO, thinking you're a Trojan horse, like me, be a Trojan mice. Start with small changes on those leverage points that could lead to bigger changes in your organization. Learn from your feedback loops, because that is how systems really change, with small incremental improvements, just like software systems. And as with the mystery of the afterlife, we need to get comfortable with the unknown. We can't keep Frankensteining our organizations, trying to keep dying things alive, hoping that the old world would come back, because it won't. It's gone. And while we are alive and kicking, we need to take responsibility for our own part in the system, because the problem isn't out there with disruption and competition and AI. It's in here. We need to stop reacting to problems and start building organizations and systems which are truly adaptive and create that purposeful vision for the future together. So let's reverse control and use learning, trust, and collaborations as the real tools for thriving in complexity. learning, to get a shared and better understanding of our systems and all the layers underneath. For that, we need curiosity and critical thinking. Trust, to enable people to speak up and listen, also when people are telling you things that you would rather not hear. And collaboration. We need to incentivize people to work together, to invite different perspectives and value diversity, to co-create those environments that will truly bring adaptability. No, you can't do it alone. Neither can I. But without you, nothing happens. So if you want my help to brainstorm what your first act could be as a Trojan mouse, or if you want my help to co-create that adaptive organization together with your teams, please come and talk to me after the session or reach out to me online. You can practice also your radical candor by giving me some feedback. It's highly appreciated. But in any case, please, don't let it stop here. Let's continue the conversation at the coffee table. Thank you.